Welcome to Sound Solutions Intern Takeover. We're embarking episode 6, the last and final episode, and I have to say I'm so excited. Oh, by the way, my name's Renee.
My name's Becky, but we are so excited. We're half excited because it means that we don't have to edit episodes anymore, which will free up so much time, but we're also so pumped because this project has been wildly successful, way more successful than we thought. We thought maybe like our mothers would listen to us, and instead we've had amazing, listens on every episode and tons of feedback and so much cooperation. We've learned so much. So thank you for tuning in, listening, supporting us, and just helping to make some interns project be successful.
I'm also really excited because this is the client and patient interaction episode. So I'm so excited to share with what I've been reading. It's so funny and great and humorous, and some of them are really heartfelt and they just touch your soul. I'm just really excited.
Yeah. For time's sake, we're not going to be able to read everybody's stories, but we have a handful that are really solid. So we're so excited to share those with you. Just a disclaimer, we are talking about real patient and client interaction stories. So we changed a lot of information to keep it HIPAA compliant. We changed pronouns. We changed locations. We didn't put names in. We changed, pronouns for the people who submitted stories, and also just like context to try and keep them as HIPAA compliant as possible. So just keep that in mind. And, if anything is a red flag for you, please let us know. Please email us or let us know so we can fix the episode. We'll take it down, we'll edit it, we'll put it back up, whatever, because we want to make sure that we're all, solid and good and legal and nobody's in harm.
All right, so now let's talk about our first story. This story was submitted by a supervisor about one of her students. They did a clinical practicum in a classroom full of kiddos with multiple disabilities, and there was this boy who in particularly constantly needed redirection. He was more mobile than his other peers and was able to get out of his wheelchair and would often try to escape or constantly tinker with other kiddos' feeding tubes. And so the student music therapist was usually there constantly helping redirect or engage him in the activity. The student music therapist, however, had to move towards the end of the session to help out another student who was more impaired because this activity, since the little boy was more independent, didn't need help. However, the little boy did what he usually did and got out of his chair and started wandering around. The supervisor tried to redirect him with her guitar as she was leading the session at the moment, and the little boy wandered over to the student music therapist and collapsed in her arms. The student music therapist had tears in her eyes, and everyone was astonished and looked at this pivotal moment in this little kiddo's life because he usually doesn't reach out or initiate interaction with anybody. And from the supervisor's perspective, the student music therapist had low self-confidence. She was nervous about her vocal skills and her guitar skills, and this was a pivotal validation moment where the student realized perhaps that she might be making a difference in people's lives and that it was a meaning in a moment that could never be replicated because it required so much realness of the interaction between them.
I love stories like that. I love it when you are looking for validation in a session and you have a client who unexpectedly just does something where you're like, oh my gosh, you like me. I'm so happy you like me. Because that rapport is how you get to next steps, and you just don't understand the impact that you have until you have moments like that.
I've had a moment like that working with children who are sick at sometimes, and you go in and they just cry or they don't acknowledge at all your presence. And then as you leave, you'll say or sing goodbye, and they'll look at you at the side of their eye and just wave, and you're like, I see you. I think that you don't like me, but I know what's going on here.
Oh my gosh. What about, didn't you have a patient at one of the hospitals who told you that he was a hugger?
Oh my God, this story. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm working with this patient and we start doing stuff, and then towards the end of the session, it was kind of a longer session, and I was like, okay, I gotta see other patients. So I started to close the session because all the goals were met. And as I was packing up, they were like, you can't leave. This little boy puts his hands on his hips and leans forward like an old little man and goes, you can't leave. I'm a hugger. And me and my co-intern hug him, and he's like, thank you so much as we leave. And it was just so cute and heartwarming to like experience. And the way he did it just reminded me of this little old man and trapped in this young body. It was just so cute.
There are just like so many genuine moments that you can pull out of sessions where I led a group during this internship that I was like very nervous about, and I just like, it was not something I was comfortable with. And like every single session, every single group session, I was just like, what am I doing? Is this successful? Logically, I know it is, but just because it's so out of my comfort zone, it was so hard. And I remember there was one day where one of the group members came up to me afterwards and she was like, just so you know, you're good at this.
Aww.
Like, I really appreciate like the effort that you put into this and how you engage us and how real you are. And literally that fueled me for the rest of the week. I was just like, so-and-so thinks I'm good at this. That's right. I'm over here. We're good. And it does, in that story, the clinician mentioned that she was sure that it boosted that grad student's like confidence for growth. And it really does. It just shows you that rapport can sometimes be more important than all of those little nitty-gritty goals that you're working on in your clinical skills.
Oh, yeah. And I know sometimes we'll go through sessions and it's okay. I'm okay with not being validated because I know I'm doing something and it's part of my job. Like, not everybody will have this great response to us, but those moments when everything's been really hard lately and you get that little teeny moment of validation, whether it's a wave or like a small phrase of you're good at this,
or a smile,
or
that
smile.
Kid that never smiles at
that
anybody
smiles.
And then giggles or smiles with you and you're just like, that's right.
Or that adult that kicks you out of the room and they're like, you're like, this is nothing, and then they'll see you in the hallway, oh, my favorite person. And you're just like, am I though?
Yeah, for sure. All right, so our next story is one that was submitted. In my 4th practicum, I was working in an inpatient psychiatric unit, and I was leading the group session solo that day. We had to do a meditation portion at the end of the session before a final chant, and I decided to take a risk and use my flute to play some improvised music in the style of a Native American flute. I had always told myself that I would never use my flute in sessions because I was classically trained, and my college made me feel inadequate when it came to playing the heavy performance stigma connected to the instrument. I had everyone take a few deep breaths and invited them to close their eyes if they felt comfortable doing so. I started playing, felt like I wasn't getting enough air through, and began worrying about whether everyone could hear or notice the shakiness of the notes, but I kept going anyway. At some point, I got so lost in my playing that I felt like it was an out-of-body experience hearing this music and forgetting that I was the one creating it. I finished up, invited everyone to slowly open their eyes, and return to the group. An older woman who had entered the group just before the meditation turned to the client next to her. She asked him, "Do you feel that?" And he goes, "Feel what?" And she said, "Feel the calm." I don't know if she knew that I heard. I didn't even hear what was said in response until my supervisor told me in our debriefing after the fact. But it was that moment that I knew that this was my calling. Any doubt I had about my capabilities and the lulls in my self-esteem, all the negativity melted away with those 2 words. And there are 2 words I'll never forget.
Wow.
I got chills.
Wow.
That's so cool. I think that really follows up with what we were just talking about. It's just like those little things that we can never know the true internal experience of what people feel through music, and yet it's so powerful. That's so cheesy.
I know.
It's so cheesy, but it's so true.
Just going back to what she thought and started panicking inside, there's so many instances I can think of where I was playing a song and I had a sore throat, or I picked a key way too high for me, and I'll start singing it and I was like, it's too late to start over, so we're just gonna go through it. And the patient will end up crying and you'll start thinking, oh my God, I just ruined everything. But instead, they were so touched and moved by the lyrics and the fact that you're there and the realness, like the last patient or client highlight, the realness of the moment, that it just overtakes them emotionally. And so we get so stuck in our heads sometimes as musicians, like part of us struggle to leave that mindset. I relate so heavy.
I think specifically with primary instruments,
Oh,
like
yeah. Oh, my God.
I'm a vocalist, so this isn't really my space to say because I use my primary instrument all the time, but there is that element of like being trained on an instrument for performance and all of that reflection being internal. Like all of that when you're performing, it is about you. It's about how you sound and how you communicate. And there are definitely elements of that that transfer over into music therapy. But the biggest difference is that in music therapy, it's not about you. It's not about how that song sounds. It's not about if you can do it better. It's not about any of that. It's about how it affects the client, how the client or patient is responding to it. There are so many times when, same thing, you pick a bad key or like your guitar's out of tune.
A good key yesterday, but not today kind of deal.
Or like your guitar's out of tune and you're like, I can't stop now, but that E string's real rough. But then you don't realize that they don't even hear it. People who are not musicians or people who are on the receiving end of music therapy, I think, just hear differently than we do.
Not even that, or if they do hear it, they're just so happy that you're there that it just...
Yeah, all the other elements of what
so many.
makes it music therapy instead of just music overcome those imperfections. And sometimes those imperfections are how you build rapport.
Oh, yeah.
And like how you like actually... The imperfections become part, like the pivotal parts of therapy.
And what makes real music, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, I'll say that all the time. Like anytime I mess up with patients or like I start a song and I like just straight up switch keys, I'm like, that's not a good key today. We're going to switch. Like I'll always be like, benefits of live music. You know it's real when it's not perfect.
I was working with a teen and I messed up this song terribly. And we ended up turning it into a roast session about me. And in that roast session about how terrible I am, we ended up bonding, and then we went through some counseling and verbal processing of session that I thought we would never get to. Just that mess up turned into something so essential to help him open up about his coping and the situation. And it was a good session. So it's amazing how much we get inside our heads, and then that's not even what's happening, which is unfortunate that we miss it sometimes, but...
That's part of the learning curve, though. It's like you have to figure out that transition between, okay, I need to focus on myself to build my skills versus, you know, I need to be present in the moment. And I remember several sessions when I was still doing clinicals at school where I would legit forget entire sessions because I was so present, which is really good. And my skills were becoming more instinct-based. But at the same time, you need this balance of like being present with the patient and not being internal, but also having the presence of mind to make clinical decisions. So it's this really weird toss-up that I think you just get through experience. I assume, I hope we get it through experience.
So to change topic, not change topic, but talk about a really funny mess up. A supervisor submitted something their student did, and I'm geeking out laughing. So
especially because I have done the exact same thing. Like I read this story and I was like, is this one of my supervisors submitting this? Like we didn't get a name. It was anonymous. And I was just like, is this me?
Is this me?
I've definitely done this.
Okay. You guys are going to get a kick out of it. It's kind of, well, it's a little bit inappropriate. So just a disclaimer, but it's pretty funny. So they're working with a geriatric group and the nursing home was singing, "She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes." And they were asking what will they bring for Thanksgiving. So they were going to do a Thanksgiving rendition. So what should we bring her for Thanksgiving when she comes? Or what should we have ready for her when they come? So the student going around asking patients what they'd bring, and the one patient said me, and his name was Dick. So they got the entire nursing home to be singing, "We will bring her Dick when she comes." And apparently the CNA actually wet her pants because the entire nursing home was singing. And it's just super funny because you don't think about it when in the context. It's someone's name, but
as a student, you like don't hear any context. You're just like, yeah, this is how we fill it up. And I think she goes on to say that the student was so embarrassed and like had difficulty singing the rest of the session with that. But like I've done that. I've done that where people will say things that like may be inappropriate in older adult sessions that I don't even think about. And then like I'll sing it and I'll be like, maybe we should be doing this. But you know, like half the time the group doesn't get the context either.
No, they're just in the moment, living
in the moment. But you know, your supervisors, the nurses, everybody else is just like, okay.
I can just imagine being the student and me being me.
I tend to overlook how things come across sometimes in wording because I'm just so in the moment. So, like, I can come off as naive with things like that and being like, oh, yeah, here we go. And then as we're singing it, seeing everyone's reactions and from the social cues, I'll be like, okay, like, mistakes were made.
Mistakes were made. Something happened. I like older adult groups are great, though, because they're so blunt.
Oh my God, yeah.
I remember doing a spring songwriting thing one time in a clinical, and I asked this guy, I said, hey, what do you like to do in the spring? And he went, none of your business. And I was this like naive little, I don't even know, I was probably like 19 at the time, and I was like, oh, okay. I was like still like playing, but like my strums were slowing down because I was trying to figure out like how to respond, like what to do. And the client next to him went, oh, honey, he didn't mean that. It's fine. He likes to do this. And he went, no, I don't. And I was just like,
I don't know.
It's when you start shooting like panicked looks to your supervisor and you're like, what do I do? How do I fix this? I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness. There's another patient story that was submitted by Audrey. And
Audrey is our senior intern.
Who's no longer with us, who got her MTV. She's not dead. See what I mean? We just talked about this.
She's no longer with us because she finished internship.
And she's got her MTVC. Woo woo.
We're just going to laugh this entire episode, and the levels are going to be so high. It's going to be so much fun.
Anyway, she submitted this story talking about blunt people in sessions. She was asked to go see a patient that was very dysregulated, combative, agitated. So she went in, and they were older, and she went for a familiar song, You Are My Sunshine. So she'd be singing, you are my sunshine. And in between, like, the phrases, this patient would be like, I don't have any time for this. My only sunshine. I have to go let the kids out. You make me happy. And, like,
No, yeah, that's right. She was singing.
Yeah, and the patient sang along with her and couldn't help but sing.
Yeah, she was like, the patient was interrupting herself.
Yeah.
Singing.
Yeah. So, like, Audrey would sing and the patient would sing with her, but in the pauses of the phrases, this patient would go, I don't have time for this, and just start yelling.
Well, you and I had a patient a couple of weeks ago, and they were trying to get him to eat.
Oh, yeah.
And Renee walked in this room
this is really
to
funny.
try and help, bring in some relaxation.
Oh, this is hilarious.
And initially, the client, he was all for it.
I walked in the room with my guitar, and he looked at me, and he's, like, yelling at all the nurses and stuff, and they see my guitar, and he instantly smiles, like, I love music, blah, 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 and we start singing some Elvis, because that's what they requested, and then all of a sudden, he looks over at his piece of turkey that's cut up, and that it's warm and not cold, and then starts screaming at me that my turkey needs to be cold slab of turkey, and my potatoes need to be warm. It was so funny. And I'm just like, ain't nothing but a hound dog. Trying to do like ISO principle where you meet them and bring them down, because like they were totally with me until they saw the piece of turkey.
It was a trigger, man. That turkey. Well, I like walked in. I was like, should I help? Should I stay? I don't have another referral, so I can jump in. And I walked in, and I was like, maybe relaxing Elvis. So I was like, we should do Can't Help Falling in Love. And Renee was like, here, you play the guitar. So she handed it to me, and I was out of the patient's view, and the patient was calming down. I love it when this happens, when they like physically respond to the music, but mentally are like, no, I'm not doing this. And he was still talking to you, but then going, I just want you to stop. And we were like, I'm just hitting stuff. It's great. My arms are flailing everywhere. And we were like, Renee was like, stop what? Should we leave? No, just make her stop playing guitar. And I was like, okay. And then I stopped. And then he got more agitated. So I played again.
And then they responded calmer.
And then they became calmer. And then they realized they were hearing the music. And he was like,
gosh.
no.
This happened again to me. There was a patient in more long term, and they were freaking out, and you went in to see if they wanted music therapy, and she was like, no, I don't want music therapy, I'm just gonna punch you, like, get out of here.
That's right. Renee is more resilient than I am. If somebody's like, no, even if I see it, if they tell me no enough times, I'm like, okay, I'm
more empowering
accepting
for them
this.
to say no.
Whereas Renee comes from an NMT behavioral background, and she's like, I can help you. And we got this referral, so we're going to make this work for a little bit.
Yeah.
Until I know I can't help. And Renee waltzed in there and just like was I need you to breathe, ma'am, I need you to breathe. And just was playing. And outside the door, I could hear, this isn't helping. I don't want music. Please leave. I'm done. And I was like, Renee needs to get out of there. And all of a sudden, I got super quiet. Renee walked out, and she was like grinning. She was like, she fell asleep. I was just like, okay.
It was super funny. They were fighting me, and then they were stating reasons why it's not going to work because they're this or because they're this. And I said, oh, that's okay, like trying to affirm, like, it's okay that you're this, I'm going to help you. And they go, no, it's what I'm trying to work on. And I smiled, and I was like, then we're going to work on it starting now. And they just look at me
and then
like,
all
what?
of a sudden, didn't she go, wasn't she like, wow, I don't know why I'm so relaxed right now.
Yeah. So they were falling asleep, and I'm playing, and they're like, falling asleep. They're like, this is not working. I don't know why I'm so relaxed right now. And they've not had their meds yet. I was just ISOing principal them and bringing them down. And then right before they fell asleep, they were like, I need 2 cups of ice cream. And I was like, I got that for you. And then I walked out, and they were out. One of the best stories I love that one. It's so good. Coming from a hard nose, we have the submission from another co-intern. So upon entering the room, the music therapist decided to ask them how they were feeling, and the patient rolled their eyes, and they're like, I'm in the ICU. How do you think I'm feeling? And they learned that...
I love that voice. Just a P.S. You are listening to quality interactive content. Proceed, Renee.
Sorry. And they found out that the patient was a musician themselves and spent a great deal of their life touring with a band. And they gave some friendly banter, and then they asked what song they'd play, and if they could play a song, and they're like, oh, fine, you're here, I'll give you a chance. And so they went and proceeded trying to figure out their music tastes, and the patient was like, I like this specific music. And they're like, oh, okay, we know these songs by the Beatles, blah, 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 blah. They're like, no, older Beatles.
I hate it when people do that. I hate it when people are like, I like the Beatles, and you're like, yes, I know the Beatles. And then people are like, early Beatles. And I'm like, no, I don't know what that means. And everybody who says early Beatles is very specific on what they like. Sorry, proceed.
They were very specific. And they finally agreed to settle on Simon Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Waters. At this point, the music therapist intern was singing the song, but struggled to remember the melody, so they did a coffee house rendition of it, which is what I call when you just fit the melody in the chords and it sounds good, but it's not right. They tried to get the patient to sing several times in the session because they found out that they were a musician, but hard no, not participating, upset in the hospital.
Guess you can stay, but I'm not here for it.
Yeah. So they sang the song Bridge Over Troubled Water, and the patient was like, well, that's not how I would have sung it. And so the intern was like, okay, how would you sing it? And then they got this patient to sing the entire rest of the session. And the patient then was stated, like they asked him how they were doing at the end, and this patient stated, feeling good because I had music. And the facial affect was brightened significantly. It's funny how these hard-nosed and sometimes slightly skeptic people will completely do a 180 by the time you're done in the session.
I mean, that's also, I love it when IDT members and other people give you warnings. They're like, I wouldn't go see this person, or like, this person isn't very nice. Or something like that. I remember I had this one patient who his nurse was like, no, don't. He's so mean, yells at everybody. Like he's in a really hard time right now, and it just, don't go. But then I got a referral from his social worker, and I, like, the entire, like, time I was planning to go see this patient, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to say if he yells at me. Like, this is how I'm going to redirect. Like, this is how I'm going to win him over. It's going to be fine. And I saw the patient, and he was like, maybe. I don't really know why you're here. And we literally did no music. No, I played one song in a half an hour session. And the rest of the time, we just talked, and we built rapport. And then I played the one song, and he went, you're pretty good. And I was like, thank you. And he was like, you can come back. And I was like, okay. And I literally saw him for a handful more sessions. And every week, what he would do is he would teach me music, and he would make me pull up songs on my iPad and learn how to play them on the spot. And then we would talk about those songs and we'd process. And then I would play that same song that I played the first session to end every single session. And he loved me. Like, he would cancel all of his other visits for the day except for me, and I would go in and see him. And there were so many days where I was just, I'm not doing anything. I'm literally just practicing when I go see this guy. But it was so impactful for him and his processing, and also for me. It was a really good learning experience. But it was just so funny to see who he was outside of music versus like the relationship that we had together when he would be teaching me random Western songs that I had never heard of, or worse, songs that my dad taught me the first half of and then made up lyrics, and that's how I thought it went. And it did not go that way.
It's really cool how music bridges that gap, and you're able to go deeper and further social and emotionally with a patient, or they have a breakthrough physically, or their speech comes back together. Like, I've had patients, just because of what we do and what we are, have such significant breakthroughs in such short amount of time that other people are like, whoa, what is this? And I think that's so cool to listen to these stories and listen to how everybody has those failure moments, but also those successes where you're like, this is what I do and why. It's so cool.
It's also cool to see the arc. We had a lot of intern or student-based stories that we chose just because you can see a lot of growth in those. And like Renee and I have had so many of those moments. We had this one group that we led. It was the first active music making session that we co-treated
Oh my God, yeah.
in internship. And we planned it. We had our session plan. We were good to go.
You were confident.
We were super confident. We were like, this is going to go great. Active music making. What could be easier? And I led the first thing and it failed so hardcore. I couldn't get anybody to engage. The group couldn't keep a solid beat. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I looked at Renee, and then Renee tried something, and it failed.
Yeah, it was, and the session was just bouncing back and forth between you and I.
We just kept trying to lead something and failing and looking at panic at the other person like, your turn, go for it. We learned how to lead active music making in those sessions.
Yeah.
And then the thing is that now we can lead it anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Now that we failed so hardcore, our session plan was just in shreds. We were like, we didn't do anything that we planned on, and nothing worked, but it happened.
And my school emphasized like flexibility and going off the session plan. It's not law, and so I felt like I was pretty good at it. It was like, look at me, I'm good with my education, and then I go in and
I'm good with my education,
and these people just destroyed me.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I have a lot to learn.
That's something that our internship director tells us, though. Barbara is a huge fan of saying, you learn from your clients, you learn from your patients, be open to those lessons and take those failures as something that you learn from later. And it's really true. It's very uncomfortable and unfortunate sometimes to be in those moments, but then you come out of it and, songwriting with groups, you learn to think through those phrases before you sing them. You learn how to have many plan Bs all the way through Z sometimes double A, double B after that when you jump into a group.
And I think that's also cool. Unfortunately, we didn't get to share all the responses, but as you see the therapist mature and get better at their craft, the overarching success stories that happen and the inspirational moments that happen were so cool to read and listen to.
Most of the stories, it's funny because most of the time, I think when you talk to older clinicians or MTBCs who've been certified for a while, most of the stories that they tell are from internship as well. There's just like so many pivotal moments where stuff fails and you're like, cool.
Yeah.
All right, I know now and I won't do that again, or I'll approach it from this way. And that's also something that I think is super important. My school did symposiums twice a year on different topics. And I remember there was a keynote speaker one year who shared a story about how he used a new technique and he really failed. And it wasn't even a funny story. Like, it was a very sad story of what happened and just like the client he was working with. And in this story, though, I just remember sitting there, and I was probably only like a year or two into the music therapy program, and I was like, wow, nobody talks about when they fail, but this is so helpful. Like, this cautionary tale is so helpful for me. And he talked about that as well. It's just like, you know, it was about the emphasis of the power of the medium that we use, but it was also, we need to talk about this side as well. If we only tell success stories, there's half of the knowledge is just gone.
Oh, yeah. And I'm a big, strong believer that you learn from failure.
Yeah, you are a big, strong believer of that.
I have no fear response, so I will do things, and if I fail or the patient doesn't react well, I instantly change and I keep bouncing, but I won't know until I try. So, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. So, listen up there. Don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone, eh?
Oh,
You can say sorry later.
Sorry. All right, everybody, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for everybody's participation. Thank you for filling out the survey. Thank you for finding the episodes, listening, submitting stories, submitting resources. Thank you especially to all of the people that we interviewed that were so flexible, so kind to donate their time and help us with that. We learned so much from you, so thank you so much. Also, thank you for just putting up with our learning curve as we figure out how to do a podcast. We know some of the episodes were, you know, not always as fun to listen to as far as the audio quality. So thank you for bearing with us, and we are just so grateful for everything that we learned from this project, and it's something that Renee and I actually hope to continue in the future after internship once we can think that far ahead.
Yeah. If you like us or have us, we'll figure some things out. So now, this is our last and final resource corner. Here we go.
Don't worry about it. We're not going to try and build the chord this time. We figured out what the problem was.
We were both thinking of different chords the entire time.
Yeah, it was a problem.
But it made it cringy and great.
It did, but that's why we left it in. You know, sometimes you just need some like light humor.
There you go.
In your day. There you go. All right. So for our last resource corner, we have 2 interventions for you. Both are active music making interventions.
And saved our butts in groups.
Yeah. Ooh, several times. You know, when you have like 10 minutes left and you're like, ooh, I can't end early, but I need to do something. These are great ones to tack on at the end that also have room, you know, if depending on the group you're working on, they have a lot of room for processing.
Oh, yeah, great processing.
And yeah, have a lot of undertones.
Yeah.
Which one should we do first?
Let's do I Have a Beat.
Okay.
So this one's with drums or any kind of percussive. You could even do clapping or something like that. It's meant for soloing too. So it gives a framework where we can practice stepping out of our comfort zone or expressing ourselves. So I'm just going to tap my lap because I need to do it for feedback. So here we go. I have a beat, a beat, a beat. I feel it in my feet, my feet, my feet. I feel it in my toes, my toes, my toes. And this is how it goes, it goes, it goes. So then they'll come up with a simple beat, and then everyone copies it. And when the solo is up, I have a beat, a beat, a beat. I feel it in my feet, my feet, my feet. I feel it in my toes, my toes, my toes. And this is how it goes, it goes, it goes. Now Becky's gonna come up with a beat. And then you keep going, and then when you're done, you just center them by I have a beat. And you can bring it by going faster, slower, and you can go around in a circle if the group's small, or have selected individuals where you point at them, or have them make eye contact to who's soloing next and play a game of popcorn.
Yeah, you can also do a call and response within that. It's a great assessment tool to see, you know, what kind of group members you might have.
If there's listening, following directions.
Yeah, leadership, who like jumps in. Are they able to, do they have the receptive ability to, you know, copy that beat once they hear it? You can start with something really simple. So you can use it in a lot of different ways, but it's
can
a
they
really...
shift their beat fast and can come back to the regular tempo?
Yeah, for
Stuff
sure.
like that. There's a lot of assessment that can go on, and also at the end, if people aren't listening or following, you can talk about why.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a really great chant that's simple so everybody can get on the same page and follow with you.
Adapt as you will. Adapt as you need. The next intervention is a egg shaker one.
Well, it's a chant that
It's
we
also a chant.
generally use with egg shakers.
Yeah. So for the game, I'm going to explain it real quick and then you can explain the chant. I always make them promise to keep their left hand up, palm facing towards the sky.
Before we get there, okay, you're in a circle.
Yes,
right?
you're in a close proximity circle.
You need to make sure that you are next to each other. You need to make sure that you're close enough next to each other that somebody can reach over and grab something from their neighbor's hand.
Yeah. So I always make them promise to keep their left hand up no matter what. They will always hold it up. No matter what, palms facing up, hands like fingers out. No like clenching anything, keeping them nice and straight. And then we'll place the egg in the left hand. From there, with your free right hand, you're going to grab from the person's left hand. So take, shake, and then place in your left hand.
So what's happening is your right hand is moving far to the right,
Shake.
shaking in the middle, and then placing in your left hand.
Yes.
And
Take, shake, place is usually what I say as we get started.
you can also simplify this or make it more complicated. So instead of doing a grab, shake, place, you can just do grab, place, grab, place. You can make it more difficult or more simple just depending on what kind of group you have.
And what actions you're asking them to do in the circle.
Yeah.
And the point of the game is no matter what, they will not stop. They will keep going. If eggs fall, eggs fall. Pretend that nothing's happened. Like, just keep going and air egg, imagination egg, something.
So then what happens is you sing a chant over it and it gets faster and faster. So you have that pass movement where you're grabbing, shaking, placing, grabbing, shaking, placing. So it's grabbing, shaking, placing, grabbing, shaking, placing. And you continue that and then you sing a chant over it. So a little multitasking. So the chant we use is called Haida, which is a pretty commonly used chant. And it just means, I think in Hebrew, it means like nothing, or it's kind of like la. It's either Hebrew or Yiddish. I'm not sure. I'll double check. But how it goes is it goes Haida, 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 Haida. So you just keep going and you get faster, and as you get faster, the egg pass gets faster. What generally happens is that eggs start to fall because it's that coordinated movement. People start dropping them. It
gets crazy.
It gets crazy. But the wonderful thing is that you're getting, like you're crossing midline. You're doing all of these great physical and cognitive things. But then you can also get into a really great conversation about, like dependability and accountability and teamwork and what things could have we done better? Like what were the hard parts that came up? Is doing something slow or easy, talking about all of those key elements and really bringing it into like a team building exercise as well as something that's energizing and fun and going from there. And you can do it with or without the chant. We find that the chant, if you have a group that is higher functioning, is really great to kind of bring it together.
And another stimulus too.
So it's just another building block if you can add it. Awesome. I think that's all we have for you. Not even today, but for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. Thank you all so much. This has been amazing. My name's Becky.
My name's Renee.
And we are R&B. This was the Intern Takeover. It has officially ended. Sound Solutions, you can have your platform back.
You're welcome.
And yeah, for the last time on this platform, R&B out.